Hi everyone, welcome back to End Zone Scoop. I'm Liz, and with me is my wonderful co-host Dana O'Gorman. Now, for those of us listening live, don't forget you can use the chat function to ask any questions or share your thoughts during the show. We are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into the playoff picture, looking at the standings and things like that. But first, Dana and I have got some really exciting news. So Shona, who is obviously not here right now, her and Andy, her husband, had a baby last week. She gave
Yay.
birth to a baby boy, Liam Duncan Skinner.
Hmm.
And we are so excited, and I can't wait for Shona to come back. I'm sure baby will make an appearance on the show at some point, no doubt.
Right. And the funny thing is when Shona first told us that she was pregnant and we were figuring out when she was due and it was going to be mid-season and we were going to have to work through all of
Yeah.
this, the first thing she said is, I am not stopping podcasting. Give me a couple weeks and I'll be back. I was just like, okay, sure, honey, we believe you. So yeah, and she
Exactly.
is, it's so good. And we're so excited for them and their first baby. And I cannot wait to squeeze that baby at some point. I think I told you guys I had a dream that she was having a little girl named Ian. Don't know why, but I was wrong. So now hopefully I'll get to go squeeze this little baby instead. So congratulations to the Skinners. We're so excited for them. So
Yeah, it's amazing news.
it is. It really is. So funny.
Oh, standings. Why don't you
Yeah. So today we're gonna break down a couple of different things that are going on. It's past, week 10. We're getting in there, we're into week 10. Um, this season has been very bizarre. If you look at just straight up from a record point of view, if you look it up from like any of those usual milestones that we kind of mark throughout the season, it's been an odd season. And so what Liz and I decided we were going to do today is we're going to talk about the standings and kind of where everyone sits. And then we're going to talk about the playoff picture. Now, calm down. I understand it's a little early for the playoffs, but with the way this season is rounding up and looking like, it might not be too early to talk about the playoffs because just as you guys know, I live in Kansas City. My TV this morning down on the bottom ticker, it said soon you'll be able to buy playoff tickets for the Chiefs. I mean, that's where we're at because the season has such a dichotomy to it. So let's look at, let's go ahead and look at the standings where we are right now. So after this last week, after week 9, we're going to start with the AFC East. You have the Bills sitting atop of a disastrous division. There's no other nice way to put it. I'm so sorry. But you have the Bills at 8-2. You have the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots, all with just 3 wins. Now, the interesting thing about the AFC East, in my opinion, Liz, and you let me know where you sit at it, is that I think this game on from this weekend for the Dolphins was a turning point. If we can see more games like that out of them, this win-loss record could change really quickly for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think they've been a bit unfortunate with some injuries, haven't they, as well? I think that's probably obviously the biggest thing. But I definitely, before the season started, thought and kind of had higher expectations for Dolphins, and
we all did.
Unlucky, unlucky that it's happened the way it has. But I don't know, Patriots are one of those teams that for a long time's not been the most amazing of sides to watch, and obviously this is I think the first season without Bill Belichick as well, isn't it? So interesting to see how that one's kind of playing out. But Jets, I don't know. There was so much hype last year before it even started with Rodgers being, the savior that would save
right.
Jets. It's not made it like he's back, he's healthy. It's made no real difference, I suppose.
I think when you look at this division, it's really only the Dolphins that maybe could make a push, and they have the talent for it. And if Tua can stay upright, and now Tyreek Hill has an injured hand, but he played through it, so we'll see what happens with them. I think it could be really. Could be a different second half of the season for Dolphins fans. Let's just put it that way. Then you look at the AFC North. That is a much more competitive division, and I like this division. The Steelers are sitting at the top with 7-2. Ravens right behind them, 7-3. Then the Bengals at 4-6. The Browns at 2-7. Now we don't expect much from the Browns for the rest of the season. Obviously, they have lost Deshaun Watson for the season. They just have had a lot of injuries. Even with Nick Chubb coming back, it hasn't been a huge resurgence for them in any way, shape, or form. The Steelers and the Ravens are really the two teams to watch, and they've been a lot of fun to watch. And I think that they're going to go neck and neck. And I think Russell Wilson being there has made just a huge difference for the Steelers. No offense to Justin Fields. He held the ground as he needed to, but really they needed that veteran presence, and they really did get that for him. So I think that's exciting. That could be a lot of fun to watch. Then you look at the AFC South, where you have the Texans sitting at the top with just 6-4. I thought that the Texans would have done better than they have so far this season, but they also have had some injury issues. Obviously, Nico Collins is still out and not coming back in. Then you have the Colts at 4-6, the Titans and the Jags with 2 wins apiece. The interesting thing with the Colts is they announced today they're going back to Anthony Richardson as their starting quarterback. Joe Flacco is out. I think they're just trying to figure out what works in that division.
Yeah.
But here's the one I want to talk kind of more in depth about. But I want to talk about the AFC West. And it's not just because the Chiefs are an unbeaten team, although we're going to discuss them. It's because of the rest of that division. So you have the Chiefs at 9 wins, the Chargers sitting there at 6. Now, I think a lot of people knew that when evil Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, came back to the NFL, that he would make an impact. We just didn't know how soon or what type of impact with Justin Herbert. You have the Broncos, who no one had any expectations for, sitting there at 5 wins, doing better than that many thought they did. And the Raiders, being the Raiders, sitting there at 2. Here's what I want to ask you about, Liz. So when you look at this division, first of all, the nice surprise that we're getting out of the Chargers coming up there. I want to talk about the Chiefs. And I don't want to talk about the Chiefs because they're undefeated and look out, Dolphins, here they come. It's because honest to God, they are the luckiest team in football. Their wins have been so close, and the slightest wind change on a couple of those plays, they would have a very different record. What is your impression of the Chiefs this year?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, like you say, they've gotten lucky on a number of occasions, and honestly, I think it was so unfortunate that they won. It's unfortunate they won the game. That sounds so stupid to even say, but
no, I get what you mean. Yeah. I get it. I totally get it.
But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think they've necessarily been standout, but then their record is standout, and it feels like this happens all the time. And straight away the next morning, all I could see all over Twitter was the rumors. So there was a female referee in the game apparently, and Taylor Swift took videos and pictures with her, FaceTime the family beforehand, and therefore that's why they win. What was the other reason I saw? Oh, apparently Mahomes asked the referee to let him know when. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just like there's all these different things, and it's like it's reminding me of the whole Patriots thing all over again. Mm-hmm. And I was one of those people that hated the Patriots, and it's not that I hate the Chiefs, but it's just like I would just like to see someone else be successful. Right. Once is all it is. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. They keep getting the wins, and that's clearly because they're a good team.
Right.
And luck is on the side, whatever.
Yeah, they are definitely a good team. I don't think anyone would ever take that away from them, but they're not helping themselves either, right? And so you have all the conspiracy theorists out there, with the NFL and Taylor Swift have a contract that this is what's going to happen. You have Mahomes being caught on a hot mic saying, hey, let me know if he's coming up behind me or something to that effect, which could be interpreted about 30 different ways. But of course, NFL fans are like, oh, see, refs are in the pocket. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so they're not helping themselves in fan perspective in any way, shape, or form. The interesting thing about this is if you go back and you look at their record, they're squeezing out these wins just by the tiniest of margins. They beat the Ravens on the first game of the season, 27-20. But then they only beat the Bengals by 1 point. The Bengals were terrible back then. Beat them by 1 point. They beat the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons, only by 5. Then they beat the Chargers by 1 touchdown. They absolutely murdered the Saints, which they should have. Good for them, 26-13. And then they beat the 49ers. Thank you. Forever grateful for that. 28-18, but still just 10 points. Then the Raiders, the 2-win team, 7 points. They only beat them by 1 touchdown. The Bucks by 6. The Broncos by 2. And that was a blocked field goal that saved them. And so I am not trying to be disrespectful. The Chiefs are a good team. We know Patrick Mahomes is the guy that can put a team on his back and pull out a win. It's just that I think, Liz, when you look at it, they're beatable. They're a beatable team. You don't look at a 9-0 win or 9-0 record, pardon me, and say, No one's getting past the Chiefs. They are a
Yeah.
bulldozer. You
Yeah.
don't get that this way.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is fueling my particular opinion that when I'm going to keep saying when they have to play the Lions in the Super Bowl, I'm telling you, they might get steamrolled in the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the playoffs here in just a little bit, but I want to talk, since we're talking about the Chiefs, do you see the Chiefs in the way that they've been playing in these tight games, making it back to the Super Bowl this year? When you think about how much better some of these, the Bills are getting better, the Ravens are getting better. You have all those kind of perennial teams that always fought with them, but you don't have the juggernaut in the Chiefs that you had before.
I'd be relieved if they weren't in the Super Bowl. Just again, like I say, just to have something different. But I don't know if they're managing to scrape by, and that is literally what it is. If they're managing to scrape by in these, then I just got a feeling they're going to do it again. It just seems who they are and how they get by. But I don't know. I don't want them to. But
they are getting healthy. Isaiah Pacheco has just come off. He's entered his window for IR. That would be a huge help for them. And maybe that's it. Maybe that some of these injuries are the reasons that they're scraping by. But they do seem to be getting a little stronger, which should be a concern to other AFC teams for sure. But they're an interesting one this year. All right. So let's talk about the NFC on the other side. You have the NFC East. Two different worlds living there right now. You have the Eagles and the Commanders, both with 7 wins. Then you have the Cowboys and the Giants with 3 and 2. Ooh, we're going to talk about the Cowboys here in just a minute. Then you have the NFC West. You have the 6-win Cardinals, 5-win Niners, 2 4-win teams. This division is a little bit tighter, although you can definitely see the trajectory of the Cardinals right now. The 49ers, even with Christian McCaffrey back last week, he was definitely on a pitch count. He just wasn't used as much as he could have been. So we'll see what happens. And then the Rams and Seahawks are a crapshoot every single week. You have, it's so true. NFC North, you have the 8-1 Lions. God love them. You had the Vikings, who I was loving at the beginning of the season. Now it's 7-2. They have been struggling a little bit more, but I still think they're a very good team. The Packers coming in with 6 wins. And then the Bears, who just fired their offensive coordinator, they have 4 wins. We're going to see what happens with them. I don't see them gaining much traction the rest of the year. Then the NFC South, you have the Falcons with 6 wins, the Bucks with 4, and then 2 3-win teams, the Saints and the Panthers, that there aren't too many teams that are going to fear playing the Saints or the Panthers unless it's within division. Yeah. So when you look at the NFC East, I want to talk about the Cowboys for a minute. So the Dallas Cowboys, I actually had doing better this year than they had in the previous years. Obviously, I was very wrong on that. I have 2 questions for you. One, what do you think the chances are that Mike McCarthy is still the head coach there next year? And why do you think it's going to be Deion Sanders instead? And then Jerry Jones, do you think I think that this is a common term for you guys in the UK too. Has Jerry Jones just lost the plot? Like, is he just completely missing the point? And now Dak is out for the season. Oh,
yeah. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do we think Jerry Jones has lost the plot? Probably. Has to have. Like, this has been a struggle for them for years now, and I think like you said a minute ago, I had higher expectations for them this season. Kind of thought this might be the season where they do a little bit better. Obviously the record's saying no. I don't know how they change it, because it could be leadership side. If they get rid of the coach, how much is that going to change? Is it the players themselves? Is it the way they're playing the bundle of things? I don't know. It's hard to kind of work out, because for example, in Premier League football, it really annoys me when they get rid of the manager, because in my opinion, it's a team issue, not a management or leadership issue. But I don't know. They always fire the manager so easily here. So
yeah. And then what about Mike McCarthy? So talking about Mike McCarthy, talking about the leadership, he's been there for a few years now. He was very successful in Green Bay. And then Aaron Rodgers got him fired. Don't anyone tell me different. It's the truth. Y'all know it's the truth. And so I think, will they fire Mike McCarthy because they've been so bad, or will they blame the season on Dak being gone for the rest of the season? Which would be BS, but I'm just saying.
Seriously, they could go with the whole blaming Dak thing, but is that really the issue?
not in my opinion, but
no, exactly. So I don't think that would change anything. It would just be an excuse to kind of keep going, I suppose. Something needs to change, yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll be Mike McCarthy. I really do. I think that he will finish out the season because they'll just keep that continuation. I don't think they have their head coach on the staff currently. And so if they did, they would have made the change last year and kept Dan Quinn, and they didn't. And so I think that it's going to be kind of up for grabs. There's a lot of conversation happening that Deion Sanders, who played for the Cowboys and is now the head coach at the University of Colorado and doing very well there, could come over. And I think that would be hilarious. As we mentioned on the Our Turf podcast, mentioned this last night, Deion Sanders will tell Jerry about himself. Like, he would not hold back. And that could be the reason he won't get that job, to be quite honest with you. But I do think that there's going to be a change there for the Cowboys. The other team in the NFC that is interesting to me right now is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They only have 4 wins right now, but when they win, they play so decisively. And then there was that game a few weeks ago. Everybody was injured. They lost all their wide receivers. They lost everybody. And yet they are still managing to stay in these games. If and when they get Mike Evans back, I don't know. You know how I feel about Baker Mayfield. I don't like to give him credit, but you do, Liz. You've always liked Baker. I think that Tampa Bay could make a run at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I've said this long. I've always liked who Baker is and how he plays. And I think he was great with the Browns. He's not really had some. Well, he was great with the Browns for a while. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I feel like with him, it was a bit like the whole Stafford going to Rams, Goff going to Lions, finding their places in those teams. And I feel like that. Yep. I feel like he's finding his place with the Bucs, and I want him to succeed. I want them to do well. It's hard to tell, to be honest.
Right. How much the injury, but sometimes I just feel like he is willing that team to win, and that's what you need in a quarterback, right? That's what you want, and so I think that's been very good for them. Otherwise, in the NFC, honest to God, it's just going to come down to injuries and stuff like that. But let's take a turn over to look at the playoff picture, because I know, again, we realize it's a little early, but I don't know if it's too early to count a lot of these teams out.
Well,
yeah.
Also find out. Yeah. It's interesting though. So for the AFC, if we start there, so obviously Chiefs #1 spot, 9-0, as we all know. Don't think they deserve it personally, as we've discussed, but here we are anyway. Second spot is Buffalo Bills at the moment. Then it's Steelers. Honestly, Steelers have been so much fun to watch this season. I've been very excited about them, and I love that Russell's now back in, and he's just. They look so much fun. So I've got a really good feeling about them. Texans in the 4th spot. Now, a bit like you said earlier, given how we saw them last season, I was so excited what this season could be. And it's not that this hasn't been a good season. It's just not being the level I expected.
The expectation, yeah.
Yeah, that's I think I expected a little bit more. Then we've got Ravens and Chargers and Broncos. So I think Ravens, Chargers, Broncos are essentially a wild card spots. And I think, is that right? Wild card and a bit of like in the hunt. So yeah, very interesting. I'll be honest, I didn't think I would see, if you'd have asked me before the season started, would Chargers and Broncos be in there? I don't think I would have pictured them there at all.
I would have never put 3 teams from the NFC or AFC West in the playoffs. It's just not something you would have expected. Now, granted, it probably won't stay that way, but as of right now, it's really interesting to see as Jim Harbaugh learns his team even better, because that is a season-long process, what he can do with it. I love it. I love evil Harbaugh. I love to hate him. And it's been really fun to watch him this year for sure. But I do think what you said about the Steelers is really interesting. And we give Russell Wilson a lot of credit because he came in, he's starting to look like Russell of the old. But I will tell you, that whole entire team just feels different. They feel lighter. They feel like they've got that biting defense back. They feel Mike Tomlin looks like he's having a good time on the sideline again. Yeah. Right. And this is a team and a coach who's never been below 500. It's not like he doesn't know how to win. It just feels different. And I feel like having, after a few seasons of very mediocre to less than mediocre quarterback play. Mike Tomlin saw I'm not saying that Russell is a savior. We had a whole conversation about that last night. I mean, he's not a savior, but what he is a veteran that understands the game. Yeah. He understands the situations, and you could see it in that game that they played. I did, it was our game of the week for Our Turf. And so I live tweeted the whole game. There was no panic. And I think that's good. Oh. Mike Tomlin's like, thank you, God. I got it. They're super fun. But I do, if I'm being totally honest, it's going to really come down to 4 teams. It is going to come down to, in the AFC, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, the Steelers. Maybe another team pops up, in there somewhere. But I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to injuries and people getting healthy or people getting hurt. And who has that momentum toward the end of the season, which is so important.
Yeah, that makes a big difference as well. But I'd be like, with those 4 teams, like, I'm happy with that. I like.
Yeah, me too.
They've all been great, and I want them. I want it for them.
Yeah. Come on.
NFC then. Detroit Lions, they're the only team I care about. They're the ones I want. Even if my team's in the NFC, it's not going to happen. It's going to be nice.
Nope. Anyway. It's not the year for Seattle. Nope. We got it. We understand it. We're okay with it.
But hey, it's fine. It's fine. So Detroit Lions. Then it goes to Eagles. Falcons, that's always a funny one to me because I picture back to before the season started, not necessarily, I suppose, knowing that Kirk Cousins was going to be moving there at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Falcons as the Falcons, who have been pretty unfortunate for a while. Then you've got Arizona Cardinals, again, another team I would not have pictured being where they are, and I'm not necessarily sure why I feel that way. I just I'm used to them being at the bottom of our division.
Sure, absolutely. That's where they've lived for a long time.
For a long time. Then we've got Vikings, Packers, and Commanders. Now, Commanders, amazing. I'm excited about that. I'm excited that they are where they are because, again, they're a team that has been doing well, but has also been, I feel like slightly forgotten about. Vikings have been great for a good long time, and I feel like that's, again, their trajectory of them where they should be. Packers is a bit of a weird one. I didn't find them particularly exciting last season. I don't find them particularly exciting now, but they've got a good chance of it. So what are your thoughts on them?
So here's when I look at this division, you look at who sits atop each division. They're obviously automatically in the playoffs, especially right now. I think the NFC West, that's going to rotate, and it might rotate 3 or 4 times. It might go Niners, Cardinals, Rams might pop up there, back and forth. Although I do think that the Rams and Seahawks are at a spot now where they won't ever get back to the top of that division again. It's okay. But I do think we'll see a little flip-flopping in the NFC West. So I don't think that is settled. I wouldn't be surprised if the NFC West ended up sending 2 to the playoffs because of that back and forth flip-flop. You look at the rest of them, obviously the Eagles and the Commanders are right there. That's the other one I think that's going to flip-flop back and forth about who gets the guaranteed spot, who wins the division. The Commanders are playing, Dan Quinn has that team just tight, right? Which is wonderful. And then the Eagles are finding their footing again. They had a rough start at the beginning of the season. I think that they were missing Jason Kelce, believe it or not. I don't think that everyone thought that a center could make that big of a difference, but I do think that it wasn't just Jason. They lost a bunch of players and they lost a couple coaches. And so I think they just took an adjustment period. I think we'll see them. So I have a feeling we're going to kind of see some back and forth out of that too. And then you look at where you have the Lions. I don't think there'll be a back and forth between the Lions and the Vikings. I think the Lions have that one pretty well locked down. The Falcons and the Bucs, like I said, I still think that the Bucs can make a resurgence. But let's talk about the Packers, like you were mentioned before. So here's the thing with the Packers is they ended last season so strong. They rolled into the playoffs. They played well. Jordan Love looked fantastic. And then come into this season, started out super hot, got injured. But believe it or not, their backup won all the games he played. And then Jordan Love came in and struggled. We saw not this week's game, but last week's game, he was hobbling around. He's still not healthy. And I think that the Packers are going to get to a spot where either they can see that they're going to make a playoff run and keep pushing him, or they've fallen far enough behind the Vikings and the Lions that at some point they might say, okay, we've got to pull him and get him healthy for next year.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely some questionable injury situations there. So I think that's what's happened with the Packers. Plus, they don't have a lot of blue chip players. They have a good, solid team, and they have a good quarterback that I think they'll be able to build around. And the Packers are known for building their team through the draft. They're very good drafters. And so I think that this is a team that's ascending, but I think Jordan Love's injury maybe gave him a hiccup this year. So I think that that'll be, I actually really enjoy watching that team play because I like to see how Jordan Love is evolving. And I don't even like quarterbacks, but I mean, I've been impressed with that kid. So I think that that's really been pretty fun. Wild cards are going to be the NFC is going to be crazy for wild cards. It's going to come down to the last couple of games, I think, before we really know where everyone else sits. So it's going to be fun. But I think that we'd be like, it's week 10. You're talking about the playoffs. Yeah, there's enough. I think there's 7 teams with 3 wins or less. I mean, that's how bad it is this year.
That's
so I
scary,
think that,
isn't it?
yeah, it really is. So I think there's been a lot of bad football, but I think that, so I think we're already starting to kind of see that cream rise to the top a little bit. Now I have a question for you, moving on, that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you because I just thought of it as we were talking. But so obviously you are in the UK and you guys have had the London Series football. You guys have had Germany now. We are all over we're all over. Roger Goodell announced that now he wants a game in Berlin too. He ends up wanting, he says that he wants 8 games in Europe. As a fan, you had season tickets to the London games forever. Do you think him spreading it out is diluting the specialness of it, or do you think it is truly growing the sports leaps and bounds in Europe?
That's a really interesting question, because I think when I see it, I only see it from like a business perspective. I see how much money you're making for doing it.
So much money.
Like, that's honestly all I see is the dollar signs in their eyes. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and we in the UK will still get a good amount of games. I don't know what that means for us in a sense of whether the UK and Ireland, because they're definitely going to get a game, whether we will as a whole get 4 games, or if it'll still just be 3. And so one of those games that we're used to having in London is going to go to Ireland. I'm not fully sure on that part.
Right.
I've got a feeling it might be the 4, but I don't know. Spain is obviously the new stadium, because that's being built. I assume it must be finishing soon if it's not already finished. But it's the same stadium almost as Tottenham with the retractable pitch, if that makes sense.
Where is that? Is that Madrid or Barcelona?
I want to. I
can't remember.
I think it's Real Madrid Stadium, but I could be wrong.
That's what okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
I feel like it is. Yeah. I mean, I really want to go to Barcelona, so that'd be a great excuse, but Madrid will do. I think that'll be interesting. I don't know much about the fan base in Spain at all.
Yeah.
Germany, I know that that's been huge, and obviously I know that the games will continue there. I don't know whether the plan is have 1 or 2 games there. I don't know. I didn't even hear about the one about Belgium, so that's really interesting.
Oh, Berlin.
Berlin. Sorry,
yeah,
Berlin.
Yeah.
I don't know why I seem to think they're both the same place. It's 2 different countries.
You're fine. But no, that was just this week that he announced that Berlin is on their radar now. Which would be huge. I mean, they're really growing that Germany base a lot. And having been to a game in Munich, I mean, we went to the Seahawks Tampa Bay game in Munich, and it was chaos. It was, those fans were crazed, but half of them were Americans. And that is, I think, my real question. And there was a lot of complaining from German fans. They couldn't get tickets. They were too expensive because the Americans bought them all up. And so I almost wonder if it's more of a tourism trap. Or if you're really getting those fans. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, that's interesting. I suppose you could look at it like the college game that gets played in Dublin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I've only been to one of those games, and it was amazing. And there was like a pep rally on like the Friday, and a lot of people had travelled for that. A lot of people traveled. So you're right. It could just be a bit of a tourism thing. They don't need the tourism, so it's interesting.
They don't.
I don't know. But I see what you mean. Like, I can see it being like that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. It is purely a money factor, and I think it goes back to the whole: is this the test to see whether a team could sit in Europe? I don't know. I don't know what they're necessarily thinking of. So the rumors for a long time was that it would be the Jaguars would come to the UK.
But they're building them a new stadium now.
So it's never going to happen. That's exactly it. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. There's a
Yeah.
reason why they're doing it. Is it just a money making exercise, or are they trying to do something here? I don't know.
I
I
think
can't see
that
the league expanding. So
the interesting thing to me is, can it support a league of its own?
yeah, I don't think
And
so.
I don't know. That is,
Yeah.
because I know that there are American football teams over there already, and they play, I think,
Yeah.
mostly at the college level, but they're considered, they play American
Yeah.
football. And so I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I always am curious about your guys' perspective, because from us, to be quite honest with you, American, while it's super fun, I've been to a game in London, I've been to a game in Munich. I like it because I like to come visit my friends who all live over there. But more than that, it's very irritating as a fan here that I have to buy a ticket to get a home game there. You know what I mean? Like, it takes some of that away when there's only, 7 or 8 home games a year. I don't know. But let me tell you, the league will make the money hand over
Oh,
fist.
big time. Yeah, big time.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely a big one there.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to chat about?
I think that's our show for this week.
Well, guys.
No. Lots to talk about stuff. I know.
For anyone who isn't already subscribed, go to endzonescoop.com, subscribe there, and then you'll be the first to find out when we've got any upcoming shows. We know that we said we were going to do this every other Monday, and it's Wednesday, and we're doing it sporadically, and that's fine. That's just how we roll now.
Well, Shona has a baby. It's the holiday season here, which is chaos, and so it's just like, but we got you, people. We'll let you know when we're coming on, and you can come listen to an American and UK's perspective on American football.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you for listening, and until next time, have a great week.